Hello again, everybody. This is Derek, and I'm coming back at you with another Wargaming and Miniature video. In today's video, I wanted to start a new direction for my World War II updates. In the past, I had been doing some World War II updates for Battle Group. I built a terrain table and I put together a bunch of British infantry as well as Americans and some German grenadiers and some SS, and I based 15 millimeter miniatures, um, very similar to Flames of War, to be able to be used with Battle Group. But I've decided that I'm going to branch out from Battle Group and start playing some larger scale games. And the game that caught my eye was a game called O Group. O Group is a battalion scale, so you're playing as a battalion commander, and you have a battalion on the table, and or three companies in the battalion commander and supporting materials and stuff like that. It can be played with larger. You can go even bigger. You can go 2 battalions or more with multiple players. They recommend no more than 1 battalion per player. You might even be able to go with 1 company per player if you wanted to play. You just have your friends take over a battalion. You know what I'm saying? Okay, having said that, I've decided to switch to O Group. I am basically making a hard switch. So I am taking my painted models that I had based for Battle Group. I am rebasing them to be more compatible with O Group. I didn't need to do that. I could have left them based the way they currently were and played with them like that, but it was going to be like a waste of figures, and the bases were just a little bit too large. So I decided to go with a different basing schedule altogether. All right. So in front of you, I have a field battalion, the Luftwaffe Field Battalion, and it can be substituted for any German infantry battalion, pretty much. You can do Volksgrenadier, Grenadier, even Fallschirmjäger, probably, because of the way the battalion organizations are laid out. The point values, if you're using point values, they might be adjusted, and the capabilities of your squads might be a little bit different, but in general, they all look the same. Okay, so I do have to admit that I am extremely new to O Group. I would consider myself a noob, and I am rapidly reading the rules, trying to absorb different concepts and ideas and why they would be doing a certain rule a certain way. Basically, I watched a couple of videos from Two Fat Lardies. That's where I purchased my copy of O Group. I watched some Storm of Steel videos, and I basically absorbed most of it, and that's what convinced me to go ahead and purchase a copy of the rules. So I have the rules, I have the Normandy expansion, and that's what I'm drawing my knowledge from. And I have access to the forums. I got on there and I've been reading some of the comments on the forums as well. So basically, this is my baby steps portion of my O Group project. Okay, so I've got a lot to talk about the project, and over the coming weeks and months, we'll be videoing certain things about O Group. I plan to do some solo games. I plan to do a boot camp once I get the rules fully understood. And I'm going to do some terrain building for O Group, as well as maybe some battalion organizational videos and things like that. So I'm basically going to put out some videos for O Group. It might be slow coming out, but keep your eyes open. Make sure you subscribe to the channel so that you'll be notified whenever I upload those new videos. Okay, so let's talk about what I have on the table right here. This is a how do I say it? When I was building my battalion, this is a field battalion with a lot of support elements. You're not going to use all of these support elements in every game, but I just wanted to have them available so that if I decided to use them, I would have them. So basically, they're in my back pocket, so if I need them. Okay, so let's talk about the battalion. Well, for one thing, I don't have one base. One base is not out here. It is the battalion commander. I have the battalion commander figures for the base. They're all painted and ready to go. I'm just waiting for the vignette base to come in from Boetta. They've got some resin bases that have scenery pre-built into the base. Now, I could make my own scenery, but I like Boetta, and I think they make a good quality product. So I ordered some of these bases to be used with my battalion headquarters for all my different battalions, because I do plan to make like an American, a British, some para, some infantry, all kinds of different battalions, Panzer Grenadiers, and so I wanted to have a unique battalion commander base for each of those. So I ordered like 6 of these vignettes. If I need any more, I can just make them myself. Okay, so something unique. So this battalion is missing its battalion headquarters base. So, but I do have a couple of mortars here. These are 80mm mortars. Bear with me, I might jump around a little bit on this video. But there are certain units that, in O Group, there are certain units that are not even on the table. Okay, they're deployed in your rear. So you might have 105 artillery, but it's deployed like a mile behind the table. So you don't actually have to have the artillery figures or bases for the game. Okay, you don't have to do that. But there is a method being used by some gamers, and this is a method I plan to use or want to use, is that you have one, like specifically for artillery, you'll have one base per fire mission that you have available to you. Another thing I could have done was I could have put the artillery figure on the table and put a dice next to it saying that it was, it had 2 missions or it has 3 missions or something like that, and then just turn the die down each time. Or the method I'm using is that I'll put one model per mission, and then when I fire the mission, I just pick up this base and put it back in my carrying case or in the shelf or wherever. So it basically prevents you from accidentally picking up that die and rolling it or bumping it or something where it changes from like 1 fire mission to 6. by removing your base off the table, there's no way to get that mixed up. Okay, so let's start with battalion mortars. Battalion mortars, I've got 2 bases right there. You don't even need 2 bases. You can get away with 1 base or 0 bases because, again, these guys are off table. But I plan to put 2 bases on the table, mainly just to remind me that it's an option to call for battalion mortar support. I'm going to deploy them next to my battalion headquarters, just so that when I get all my orders every turn, I'll have my mortars sitting right there as a reminder that I could call for those. A lot like the off-board artillery. I'm going to have those sitting close to the battalion commander as well. And, but okay. So we've got our mortars, and then we also have an FO. Now, nowhere did I see where it said the FO received a vehicle, right? It didn't say he got a Kubel wagon or a truck, an armored car, or nothing, right? So I basically just took a look into actual TONEs for field battalions, and they're going to have, specifically the 17th Field Battalion in Normandy, is not going to have a whole lot of heavy equipment. So, plus, I plan to use these figures as the 3rd Battalion of the 1058th Regiment, which was part of the 91st Air Landing Division. And they were equipped like a light infantry battalion, not a whole lot of armor. Okay, so I give them a Kubel wagon just to it almost is like a reminder that you have an FO, right? So you got this FO because he might be lost in the shuffle. So we got this Kubel wagon, we got the 2 mortars, we got the FO, and then you would have your 3 infantry companies. Okay, so you'll notice something about each of these companies. They have a round base right there. That is the company commander. And I've color coded them. This one is a Prussian blue. This one is a Dunkelgelb. And this one here is Panzer Gray or German Gray. Right? Actually, it's dark gray. So, so each of those have their own color. Now, there's no need or requirement to do that. I just thought it would be nice. And then I paired up these large 2-inch round bases. These are called combat patrols. And you can have up to 3 per company on the table at one time. You might have 0, you might have 3, you might have 2, you might have 1, and it'll fluctuate throughout the game. But because you can have up to 3, I made 3 per company. Now, these don't even have to be bases with figures. They could just be tokens. They could be cardboard cutouts. They could be poker chips. They could be anything. But I decided to put some figures on a base, and then I color coded it to match the company commander so that I would know which company that those combat patrols are coming out of. Now, also in part to the companies, you've got 3 platoons, and each platoon has 3 bases, right? They have 3 rifle stands, if you wish, and they all have 3 figures per base. What I did was when I went through and organized my companies, what I tried to do was make sure that each platoon had an MG42 and it also had, somebody's carrying an MG42, and an officer or an NCO with a MP40. I also intermixed some Panzerfausts in there, but the figures are really unnecessary, or I should say irrelevant. But it's cool to just have everything look the way it's supposed to look. But it doesn't matter because each of these bases fires and moves and acts exactly the same as each other base. So, but I basically made each one of these a squad of German soldiers, but in O group, they're actually platoons of like 30 men. Each one of these stands being a squad. Okay, so your standard company is going to have 3 figure platoons, 3 platoons in the company, but it's also going to have 3 combat patrols. And I've got 3 figures on my combat patrols because I didn't want to use tokens. I wanted to have actual patrols running around, so I just put 3 guys that looked like they were kind of sneaking around. We got our company commanders, and we have 3 identical companies right there. All right, so in addition to that, I added now again, you're not always going to be fielding all of these. They're available options, so I went ahead and worked on them. This is a 88 platoon. It has 2 sections, including their tow vehicles, the SD KFZ 7s, right? All right. And then I've got 2 105s because I'm planning on playing in 1944. And in 1944, the Germans had 2 artillery missions. This is what I'm reading. Early wars, they had 3, like most other nations, but I guess due to ammo shortages later in the war, they now only have 2. Okay, so I have 2 of those to accommodate those fire missions. And then I have 2 50 millimeter anti-tank guns, pack 38s. I think they're pack 38. And I included their tow vehicles, which are these Opel Blitz. And right here, I've got 2 LE-18. I think it's a 75 millimeter infantry gun with 2 SD KFC's 11s, which is the light tow tractor. So we've got light tractors for these 75s. We have heavy tractors for the 88. No needed vehicles for the 105s because, again, they're not on the table. They're somewhere in the rear. And then these 50s with their trucks. All right, let's talk about these before we start talking about those. Now, you can have up to 4 medium machine guns in support. But once you get 3 medium machine guns, you have to roll off to see if you get the 4th one. And so I will be making more medium machine guns for my German forces, like my SS or my Fallschirmjägers or my Grenadiers. And if I have a desire or a need to have 4 medium machine guns, I'll just pull one from one of my other battalion support elements. And then other battalions can use these too if they need them, right? All right, so we got 3 medium machine guns. These are machine guns on tripods. And then we have the two Panzerschreck units. This is a Panzerschreck platoon with two sections. All right, so those are my supports that I've done, worked on and painted. But now there's three mortars right here. These are 120s. They're the heavy mortar. As now in the Normandy supplement, there's a rule that you can, when you call for your artillery, you can call for either 105s or 120s. There's no real reason why you would ever want to call for a 120, because the 105 is or has a better damaging, because of the battery, right? I suppose has more of a damaging, devastating area of effect or something like that. So it's actually a better attack values. But they give you the option that at the start of the game, if you want to, and this is voluntary, if you wanted to swap all of your 105s for your 120s, you actually get a bonus 120. You get an extra one. So you could have 3 fire missions with 120s or 2 fire missions with 105s. So I thought that was pretty cool. So that gives me options. Let's get a little closer to these figures and I'll let you see what they look like up close. All right, so I'm not going to go through every single figure and show you what every single miniature looks like, but you have a pretty good idea right there of what you can expect. Now, I got these tufts in, well, first of all, I finished painting and basing all of these today. And I just got these tufts in today. And I said, you know what? I'm going to use them on this battalion just to see. I did it on a couple of figures first, just to see what they look like. And I kind of like the fact that they've got this like dark brown bottom and then this light green top. It's actually more of an olive, or it's more subdued in person. The camera, for some reason, is making these look a lot brighter than they are. There's the 105s. '75. Oh yeah, you can't not show one of these. The '88s. Now the guns themselves are actually forged in battle. And I would say 50% of my gun crews are forged in battle. The other 50% are flames of war. The 120 mortar is actually a Old Glory Command Decision 120. Or is it forged in battle? Oh no, I think it might be forged in battle. Okay. These sevens are forged in battle. But these 11s are actually Old Glory metal. And these trucks are actually Plastic Soldier Company. Panzerschreck. He's actually Flames of War. Oh yeah, these machine guns. I think they're a mixture of Old Glory and because they're metals. They're a mixture of Old Glory and Forged in Battle. And I put them in a way where, or I tried to put them in a way where they were like taking cover behind the bush. Yeah, these Tufts, I'm going to order more of them. I really like them. Uh, Here we go. This is the plastic Flames of War anti-tank gun. Now I've got a 75, the Pack 40. I've got two of those, and I'll be working on those. Well, they're already painted, but I'll be working on those when I do my SS battalion, because I think I have one crew painted up like SS and another crew painted up like Panzer Grenadiers. All right, so while you're taking a look at my figures on the camera here on the screen, a couple of pieces of news about this O Group project. It's still going to be listed and labeled as my 15mm World War II project, most likely. Um, I I've ordered some things that I'm waiting for them all to come in before I start working on them. I got some cork sheets, 2 mil thick, uh, or maybe they're not 2 mil. Maybe they're 1/8 inch thick. Uh, and I got them because my first set of cork was a 1/4 inch, and it is way too big for 15mm for what I plan to make out of it. I plan to make farm walls out of it, and the 1/4 inch was just too thick. It would be great for like a 28mm, um, maybe 20 or 28mm stone wall. So I needed to get something a little bit thinner, about half the thickness. So I went with 1/8. It came in today as well, um, but I'm waiting until some other things are coming in. I ordered from Battlescape. I ordered some buildings. I've got about a dozen buildings coming in from Battlescape, and I have some bases coming in from War Bases. Really unnecessary. I was thinking that I was going to do some of these officers and combat patrols on 2 mil bases. Well, I've wound up using 3 mil because while I've been debating it, I've already ordered them, but I started debating it and saying, why don't I just go ahead and use my 3 mil, because it'll give me a thicker lip to be able to see the colors. Plus, it'll make it easier for someone like me to pick the base up. But these guys are all on small Flames of War bases, which I ordered a shit ton of more Flames of War bases. What else did I order? Oh, I ordered some felt. I wanted to try a different brand of felt to see if I could get them a little bit more stiff. Okay, so the felt I plan to use as roads and fields and woods. Maybe bases for walls and fences, maybe. Um, so I planned to, so I'm gonna like definitely do roads and fields with, like plowed fields, crop fields, that kind of stuff, and woods because you can just take a piece of felt, whatever. You can cut it into like a bean shape or something, like a figure eight or whatever. You could put it on the table and put some trees on it, and you would have a woods. But I still plan to flock it and, you know, give it some texture and stuff like that. So it's not just going to be smooth felt. Same thing with the roads and the fields. The crop fields, I think I'm going to put some plaster down, and I think I'm going to use one of those trowels that have teeth on it and scrape the trowel over it to make the ruts like a plowed field. Now, I could probably make one out of cardboard or maybe even plasticard, but and I'll probably do that. I'll probably make one out of plasticard. I thought about making one out of cardboard, but I don't think it would hold up if I tried making 2 or 3 fields. I would have to keep making more of these cardboard trowels, so I'm not going to do that. I think I'm going to make a plasticard one and plow some fields. I know some people just use corrugated cardboard and they peel one side of the paper off, and then now you've got all these ridges. That would be great, but I want to make these fields fairly small and flexible. That's why I'm going to put them on felt, and I'm going to putty the felt, and then we're going to texture the fields and all that. My roads. Now, I was going to make some roads for my eBay store. I did some experimenting with rubber and also with some felt. I found that the felt project for the roads actually lay flatter on the table than the rubber does. The rubber in the long run might be more durable than the felt, but you can't beat the ease of cutting the felt, because you can just cut it with scissors, plus how low to the ground it is. The rubber sticks up 2 to 3 millimeters, where the felt is almost flush with the table. So for O group, I think I'm going to do the blanket method. I'm just going to throw a blanket over the table. I'm going to maybe put some foam or hills under the blanket to kind of give it a rolling effect where the hill is blended with the table. And then I'm going to throw or I'm going to build an actual bespoke hill, which I probably am not going to do. And then I can throw all these roads down. I can throw all these fields down. And then I can put these next town sectors or built up areas. So I cut some MDF into a variety of different shapes where I can put these buildings that I ordered from Battlescape, because they are a smaller scale. They're like 10 to 12 millimeter N scale. Now you can shop for N scale buildings for railroads, and that'll work, because remember, these are built up areas. They're not like, it's not a single building. It's not a skirmish game. Remember, this right here represents a squad of 10 men. And in a built-up area, you can put an entire platoon in a single built-up area. And a single platoon, you're looking at like 30 men. So, which would be really tight. I mean, it could probably happen, but it would be like really tight if it was just one building. So a built-up area is supposed to represent a cluster of buildings. It could be 2, 3, 4 buildings. So what I what I've seen in a lot of like photographs and uh, conventions and stuff like that, the built-up areas that I've seen are not the same scale as the figures, right? They're the tanks and the infantry. I'm not going to say they tower over the buildings. They don't tower over them. They just, you can see that they're like 7 foot tall giants uh, because it's going from 15 millimeter to about a 12 millimeter building. Now, I already have a handful of 12 millimeter buildings, and that's what I was going to use with my Napoleonics, but I've decided not to. But in O group, I think I found a use for them because I'm going to make these built-up areas. Now I'm going to use the MDF squares. They're not actually squares, but they're close enough. They're rectangles. And then I'm going to glue like 1 or 2 buildings onto that MDF, and that will be the built-up area. Now, just to give it some life and to differentiate the edges of the built-up areas, I do plan to put fences, walls, and hedges around the outer edge, either brick walls or stone walls, and then like hedges or fences around the outer edge, so you know exactly where the built-up area is, even though it would already be obvious because it's going to be on a piece of MDF. And in this game, which I'm happy about, you do not have to pick up your building and place figures on a built-up area template, and then when they move out, you can just put the building back. This method and this mechanic allows for you to put your platoon inside the walled-in area, and then that lets you know that that platoon is inside the built-up area. So I'm excited about that too. Okay, so built-up areas I plan to work on: walls, fences, hedges. Now, this is something I've been struggling with as well, with the walls and hedges that are not attached to the built-up area, because built-up areas are going to be specifically the 10 or 12 millimeter buildings and walls and hedges. The built-up areas are going to look uniform with themselves. I'm not going to put a 15 millimeter scale wall in a built-up area with only a 10 millimeter building, right? I'm going to put 10 millimeter scaled walls with 10 millimeter scaled buildings, so at least the built-up area will look uniform to itself. But what about fences and walls that are out in the field or around roads? I think what I'm planning on doing is trying to make all of that type of terrain kind of compatible with 10 and 12 millimeter. I think. Trees are trees. That's no big deal. Road widths can vary, so that's not that big of a deal. But the height of a fence or the height of a wall and a hedge, I have to kind of decide if I want to make them a little bit smaller than normal, which I think I am. I think I'm going to make them just a little bit smaller than normal, so that they won't stand out as being out of scale to the built-up areas. Tell me what you think, if you think that's a good idea or not. My next battalion that I'm going to work on is American paratroopers. Now, having said that, there's not an army list in O Group for airborne units. There is a short paragraph in the Normandy book about paratroopers, and it says instead of a 3-man squad, or 3-man platoon, 3 base platoon, you should have only a 2-base platoon, and that would be your airborne squad or airborne platoon. And they don't take morale tests when they're reduced to only 1 squad. So I'm not sure. Does that make them, I haven't read the rules completely, but does that make them immune to morale tests? Because you're not killing 2/3 of the platoon, you're only killing 1/2 of the platoon. Because apparently the squads are very large, like 12 men. So each of the squads will have a firepower of 3 dice, where normally a rifle squad only has 2 dice. So it gives them a higher rate of fire per squad, but it means you have less squads. So your companies will still have the same firepower because smaller squads, but with more dice. So they'll have the same exact firepower, but what about casualties? Because the German now has 50% more stands. So I don't know. And then another thing, like when a medium machine gun is attached to a platoon and it all of a sudden these guys don't fire anymore, the machine gun is now the only thing that fires, but it has the same firepower as the squad or as the platoon. So it has a 6. And you're thinking, well, why would you do that? Because you had 6 already. Well, because now what that is allowing you to do by adding the machine gun, it allows your extra squads are re-rolls. So this guy rolls 6 dice, but if he misses 3 of them, he can re-roll 3 dice. So he might improve his chances to hit more often. So, but in a paratrooper unit, if you take only 2 squads, now when he shoots, does he only get 2 rerolls? It seems like it seems like you're penalizing the paratroopers. But if you look at a paratrooper platoon, which I plan to do, they should have 12-man squads, but they also have a headquarters squad, which is pretty sizable, 7 men or so. And so if you add the platoon up, they're still sitting at about 30 men. And 30 men, to me, is 3 squads. So I plan to leave the paratroopers in 3-man squads or 3 stand platoons because I think it works out better. It allows them to get to 3 rerolls if you add a machine gun. It allows for all the casualties. But I'm going to have to evaluate it and read it and absorb the rules a little bit better because I'm only just begun, right? So, but I do plan to be painting and basing up some paratroopers next, so I really need to get on understanding what I want to do with my paratroopers. Now there's a couple of people that put some suggestions on the forum, which kind of influenced me a little bit. They said that if it's D-Day or the day after D-Day, where the units had dropped in and they were scattered and they're not organized, don't penalize them on the table, penalize them in their initial bombardment. Because normally when you roll your very first command dice, certain dice represent casualties on your opponent, or disruption, preventing you from bringing in your troops onto your combat patrols. And the modified suggestion was just reverse that, so that when you roll those dice, those numbers don't apply to your opponent. They actually apply to yourself. The casualties from the bombardment could be that your troops are missing or lost, and the disruption that happens to your force could represent being scattered and just trying to reform. And I think it's a very elegant way. And this was, another person said it was an elegant way, and I agree. It doesn't change the fundamentals of the game. It basically just reverses the role of the initial bombardment and not being bombardment, but maybe being a paratrooper drop where you're all mixed up and scattered. I kind of like that idea. Instead of me forcing certain things down players' throats, like saying you have a company, but it needs to be deployed on the other side of the table, or you have this company here, but only 2 platoons can come in. You got to wait for the third one, or something, right? So instead of doing that, the initial bombardment being not technically not being a bombardment, it's their paratrooper drop. All right, guys. Well, that's all I really wanted to talk about tonight. So I know it went on a little bit longer, but this is just the first initial impression of my O group German start. I've got a bunch of SS painted, and I got a bunch of Grenadiers painted and stuff like that, but they're not really ready for prime time when it comes to O group. They're set up totally different. So I'm going to go in and rebase a lot of those, but the next one I'm rebasing is U.S. paratroopers. Not my British, even though I know my British, I probably don't even need to paint anymore, because I did a big thing for Canada's Crucible, so I painted a bunch of Canadians. I could probably, speaking of which, all right, Firefly. I only have like 2 platoons painted of Americans and paratroopers, and so those 2 platoons would equate to this group of figures and this group of figures, but I still need like all the combat patrols and the 3rd platoon, so maybe even a 4th platoon, because that's another thing. That is an option for your battalions. You could always go in with a 4th company. The Germans have this thing where they can take support options, like an assault platoon, an engineer platoon, an extra infantry platoon, or whatever, and they can create a comp group commander, which will basically make a 4th company. Or they can actually make a 4th company. They almost could have 5 companies on the table. So, let me go ahead and read up on the American paratroopers and how I want to do it, and I'll catch you in the next video.